Hey everybody, we're live here this morning on Facebook, a couple of YouTube channels, LinkedIn. We hope everybody's having a great morning. I'm George McCracken from PC Dynamix, and with me this morning is Phil Richard of Phil Richard Insurance. Morning, Phil. How are you?
Good morning, George, and everybody out there.
So today we're going to talk about cyber insurance and the importance of it. Cybersecurity over the past year has become an absolute onslaught of new cases and new things in the market that have just driven companies like mine, insane. We're putting so many things into our customer stack and really requiring things of our customers that we never did before. With that said, cyber insurance is one of the things that we're actually, as part of our service agreement, we're requiring our customers to carry. Phil and I were just talking in the green room before this started about, reviewing my own policy and making sure that, we're as well covered as we can be. But before I turn it over to Phil and talk more about insurance, I wanted to give some stats, most recently from that are floating around for cybersecurity. And a lot of people think that that it only happens to big businesses, and actually over 60% of small businesses in America have already experienced some sort of cyber attack, and that number grows daily. Phishing is a hugely popular way to get malware and ransomware into a network, and that's where you receive an email that looks like it's a legitimate email, and you click on a link and it takes you somewhere where you didn't want to be. And at last report, there's 1.5 million new phishing sites are created a month. That's it's staggering, and again, that number increases month to month, almost all the time. And so a couple of things that I wanted to bring up is just since the outbreak of COVID, so we're talking February of 2020, brute force attacks have increased over 400%. Email scams have increased nearly 700%. More than 500,000 Zoom accounts have been sold on the dark web. And there's been a 2,000% increase in malicious files that involve the word Zoom. So things are only getting worse. The landscape is changing, as I said, daily. And I want to make sure that not only our customers, but all small businesses are not only prepared to, when they get hacked, because it's no longer if. When they get hacked, they're in the best position possible to recover and resume business. So, Phil, let me turn it over to you if I can, and just tell us, what cyber insurance is, kind of what does it cover, what doesn't it cover, and what kind of impacts it can have on a business if you don't have it.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I first want to apologize. I don't know what's going on with my computer, but I'm looking right at the screen and it looks like I'm looking to the side. So please apologize ahead of time. I am not.
That's
I don't really know what's going on here, but it's very strange. So anyway, so from a cyber liability, George has already explained to you the number of claims, and I just want to touch on that real quickly, if I could, in that this is sort of like a COVID thing in my mind, and not to make that horrible parallel really, but it's not going to happen to me, depending on who you are and how you feel about that. And I don't know anybody it's happened to, and you may have. We do. This is like cyber insurance, and as we were just talking about, it can be a very innocuous, easy thing that seems harmless, and then 2, 3, 4, 6 months from now, all of a sudden, you can't get into your computer one day, and you've got 6 employees that are dead in the water, and they can't work, and you're calling George and spending a whole lot of money trying to get things up and running. This is the main component of cyber, and I think this, no, not me, concern or idea is where most clientele, kind of let themselves down, because, insurance is one of those things, you may never have had a car insurance claim. You've never hit anybody from behind. And then the first time in 25 years, and you'd never looked at your insurance policy, and suddenly somebody's attaching a lien on your home because you didn't have adequate coverage. So it's not the no, not me. It's when is it going to be me? Because it will be you. Statistics are showing, especially due to COVID, think about it. How many people are working remotely? How many of those computers on a remote basis are actually protected the way everybody presumes they are? How many children in those homes are getting on their parents' laptop and clicking on something that maybe they should or shouldn't have been? How many parents are clicking on something that they maybe should or shouldn't have been? We don't know. I got a hacking email 2 days ago. It sure looked official to me. It sure looked, or a phishing email. It sure looked like it was somebody that I expected to get an email from. I hovered over the email, did all the right things. And when I texted him on the side, he said, nope, not me. I was compromised a week ago. And my thoughts are, well, would have been nice if somebody let us know, because we could have been exposed, and he and his organization could have been accused of not notifying people, taking some of the simple precautions to let everybody know. And generally speaking, somebody like PC Dynamix can ascertain what parts of a gateway they may have opened, or you may have opened for somebody else to gain access to. And then that allows you to make the notification. So anyway, that's my little speech as far as scaring y'all to death, because that's what I do, is I create the fear that gets you to act. And what I would say now, before I forget, is whether or not you believe this is appropriate for you or your entity, whether you're a one-person business or 100-person business, have your agent, if not us, literally just fill out an application. 80% of it's going to be filled out by PC Dynamix or an IT source, because they're the ones who can answer it legitimately, what kind of protections you have in place, and then get a price. I mean, no business person can make a decision on whether they should or shouldn't have coverage unless they assess the due diligence associated with giving them a greater comfort feel at night when something like this happens to them and our employee, and suddenly they're concerned about not being able to provide e-commerce or even open their doors the very next day. So, so anyway, I hope that will prompt you to take action with whomever you want to just get an indication of pricing. Most agents can do that in a 24-hour period of time, and you'll be able to have a good basis for making a proper decision. Anyway, so as far as coverage goes, the basic elements of the cyber insurance are they're covering forensic expenses, legal expenses. That's the defense of you and your business in the event of a breach and you're accused of creating a problem for somebody else, like one of your clients. State and federal notification is huge. If you're a doctor's office and you've got 1,000 clients or 2,000 clients, it's around $20 per notification, and then you have a responsibility to do some credit monitoring. It is not legally required in every state to do that, but if you don't do it for your clients, what does it do to your public relations, your image? And how are they feeling about you? That can be as much as $200 or more per record, which could be, let's say, each individual client in a doctor's, physician's office, or insurance agency's office, for example. We've got 3,600 clients. 3,600 clients times $200, $720,000 a month for 6 months. Now, if that doesn't scare somebody, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, I don't know. As a business owner, I don't know how you can hear a number like that and not say, whatever the cost is for both the insurance and the protection has to be worth it.
Well, and that's the whole deal is that, but 90% of our listeners probably don't know what the cost is. And the cost right now is actually fairly minimal when you think of it in relative terms to what it does for you. So, and then there's the liability and defense costs, the big ticket item. You're accused. You have to pay an attorney to defend you and the costs associated with that on top of the regulatory fees. These attorneys are getting $500 to $1,000 an hour to handle these kind of claims. I mean, most businesses who have something like this file bankruptcy because they can't come out of it. They just can't come out of it. So anyway, and I just wanted to, I think George may get into some of the reasons for why these losses happen, and part of it is in this. We'll get into it with the requirements, George, further on. But first-party exposures that could happen to you. The biggest exposure is an interruption in the online earnings stream and a resulting loss of earnings and/or extra expenses associated for either you or one of your clients. It's typically not going to pay for the loss of earnings for one of your clients, but it will pay for your own. Denial of service, that is, your inflow is artificially blocked, so customers can't get access to conduct business with you. Virus damage, restoration costs, and ransom demands. Ransom is huge. I don't know if George has dealt with this. I insure a couple of other IT companies. I know they've got some significant clients. One happens to be in the banking industry, and they have seen this happen on numerous occasions, and where they walked in and there's 100 people and they can't log into a system. And then
not to interrupt, but another thing that business owners need to consider is that paying the ransom, it might get you back on that day, but you might as well be, flashing an "I'm open" sign to cyber criminals. The last numbers I've seen, it's 70+% of businesses who have paid a ransom are attacked again within the next 6 months because they know, now cyber criminals know they can get in.
Right. And then there's third-party exposure. So first party is stuff that can happen to you, the owner, your employees, your business, your infrastructure and capital costs, if you will, expenses. Third-party exposures are breach of confidentiality, privacy. So this is basically ID theft of your client's information, unauthorized access to internal information, failure of your IT to prevent unauthorized access, and not everybody has PC Dynamics, so there are tons of people who are exposed because they have not done what George and PC Dynamics are attempting to do for their client base, which is to do a thorough understanding and analysis as best as humanly possible to protect that data. And then intellectual, and by the way, that's the biggest allegation brought by the plaintiff's attorneys. And then intellectual property infringement. It has to do with media-related copyright materials that people are stealing from you, and as a result of the relationship between you and your client. So, these are some of the things. I think I've hit on, all the items that are covered. There are lots of endorsements that can be added to these policies, but cyber insurance is there. So some of the considerations are, just so you know, is when you're getting a quote from somebody, not all these policies are the same, not like your car insurance in Massachusetts. All the ifs, ands, or buts, exclusions, who's an insured, where you're insured, all those things are not uniform. Each company has different language. Some of the major players in this area are Beasley Insurance, Chubb, ACE, Hartford, CNA, Axis, and they all have their own little quirks. Some underwrite based on number of clients, some underwrite based on revenue. And then the devil's in the details. It's really incumbent on your agent when he's presenting a policy to you. And you're always welcome to ask me what kind of questions you should ask. You can probably Google that and get it from any number of sources. But it's in the who is an insured, what's excluded. In other words, is do you have an exclusion for not being encrypted or jumping on a laptop and in a hotel room and doing e-commerce and you are on a open line. We've all been there. Oh, it's not gonna happen to me. This hotel must be protected. Of course it's not. But we do it because we're all in a hurry to get something done. You might be on vacation. Oh, it's okay. I know I've done it. So, these are, these are some exclusions, and then not all policies include social engineering. I have just a little war story with a client, happens to be in the payroll business, and they got an email from CEO of a company saying, I forgot to mention, I got these two people that we hired. Here's their checking information. I would like you to send this one $35,000 and this one $50,000. The person who deals with this CEO all the time had no reason to believe that it was wrong. However, it did miss some, protocol issues within the organization that she could have followed. Still not sure she could have figured it out, but that money was gone to God knows where within 24 hours, never to be recaptured. That is social engineering. You're misled by an email. That's phishing, hacking. Some companies still exclude it, most include it. Some require it by endorsement, so the agent's got to know enough to add it on. And then they have sub-limits associated with it because they don't want to be carte blanche. The same client actually had a recent theft, fraudulent transfer, where a fictitious company, through a fictitious person who was registered in the state of Massachusetts as a corporation at a federal ID, set up a payroll, used a personal account, and that also was significant, also covered because he had the coverage. So they had the coverage. So these are things that do happen. And then the other part of it is to know that if you're a professional like an attorney, insurance agent, a physician, errors and omissions, professional malpractice, errors and omissions sometimes overlaps with this. Sometimes it overlaps with a crime policy, which is designed for just theft by employees and others or others. And so there's a coordination of coverage between the two, depending on what your needs are. And the agent needs to have the wherewithal to be able to, do those comparisons on your behalf. So I would say that's a good place to break there. There's a lot of information here, and so and I am not known to be short-winded. So my tendency is to want to keep going. But I won't. I think you get the gist of it, and the expenses that are involved. And I'm actually looking at a policy. And so, some of the coverages in brevity are data and network, breach responses, we talked about that, regulatory defense and penalties, payment card liabilities and costs. Everybody presumes, we have a friend in the credit card business, he will tell you that, even though you think that PayPal or somebody else you use, Square, or somebody has protections, this is true. They protect themselves. They don't protect you. And then they have all sorts of, you sign the contract, it's about 6 pages long, none of which you could read. So if you're taking credit card payments and every once in a while you get a little loose with it, you are at risk. Who doesn't take a credit card payment today? Everybody does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then, data recovery, and then business interruption, that's pretty significant one, right? If you're shut down and you can't operate, and this is a real problem, and you're down and out for 2 months or a month, or you have a vendor in wherever, Texas, that sends you product and they get hacked and they get shut down. Now you can't get product, you can't deliver it to your own clients. What does that mean about the contracts you have in place that you now can't fulfill? There's a big tail to this, and it's not just about you and your data, you and your employees' data. It's about putting you out of business. And for the cost today, it's not bad.
Yeah, and I think another thing to understand is, people who don't have the right systems in place, the average downtime of one of these events is anywhere between 10 and 90 days. So imagine walking in on a Monday morning, and are you prepared to be completely out of business for as much as 90 days to recover from an event? I think most business owners, wouldn't be able to last 30. Some wouldn't be able to last 5. There's the risk is so great, and I think a big part of what business owners really need to understand and learn is really what is at risk. We've been talking for a little bit now, and we keep hearing the word breach, and one of the things I like to tell our clients is there's really 2 different scenarios. There's a breach and a compromise, right? So, and to simplify things, a compromise is when somebody got in your house and walked around and took a look at everything and then left your house. A breach is when somebody comes in and rips the TV off the wall and makes away with your property. And the way those are handled, both from an insurance point of view and a legal point of view, are very different. However, they're both a lot of the fines and consequences of those can be similar. Another thing that clients need to understand is the most common way that these things get into a network is generally via email. It's the easiest way in. You're relying on your own employees to be diligent and to make sure they're opening things that they trust and they're not clicking on things that they shouldn't be. In an average 10-person company, you're probably getting 90 or 100 email borne malware attempts a month. That's just basic statistics of these events. And one other thing I wanted to bring up, and I think you touched on it a little bit, is people think that I clicked on this link and it took me here, but nothing really happened. I'm safe. That's totally not the case. On average, it's almost 100 days that a malware or ransomware is placed on a network, and it will sit completely dormant for almost 100 days and do nothing before it's executed. the entire point is to lulling you into this, sense of safety and security before, any type of breach can even be detected. So with all that said, Phil, let's talk about, what's required of a business to, get this coverage and maintain insured and feel comfortable that if they did have an event, they would be covered.
Yeah, so each company is a little bit different. I really feel strange I'm not looking straight at people. Left, it looks like I'm looking right. I don't know what's going on. So the requirements are, naturally going to follow all the WISP laws, right? Everybody should be having a written information security program. Does it mean that all your employees, does it mean that you're going to get excluded if an employee violates that program? Because they all do, we all do, it just happens. Let's face it, we're all moving so dang fast that, we cut corners. It just happens. And so the answer to that is no, they're not going to exclude it. What they want to know when you write it, there's a difference between underwriting a risk, a policy, a company, and the exclusion associated with it, the conditions for payment, the definitions involved, which are all things that should be considered when buying a policy, and how that impacts coverage when the time comes to be needed. I don't care what policy it is. The first place you look if you have a claim is exclusions, because the policies all say we cover this, we cover that, we cover this, and then you look at the exclusions and the pages are twice as long as the coverages, and a lot of them are very similar, but on these policies they're anything but similar. So it's really important. So the WISP laws, first and foremost. A managed firewall. Everybody thinks, that George literally walks around with a scepter in his hand, and he is God's gift to IT. And I think George would cautiously admit that, a lot of it has to do with how when he does an analysis and points something out and folks don't necessarily do it, they assume it's associated with an additional expense and maybe is, but they don't understand the value in what he's actually doing for them. But so it's the managed firewall is huge. But if it fails, is there an exclusion associated with it? Well, there can be. There can be, but it all comes back to what you put in the application as to whether it would be. And are you consistent in following the very protocols and procedures that you set up for your organization? Insurance is for lapses in judgment, for unforeseen events. That's the intent anyway. Data encryption. Data encryption is, you can hear my dog stop barking now because the landscape has been pulled up, so I apologize. Data encryption, yes, there are some companies that have a data encryption email exclusion. So that's something to be very, very careful of. Multi-factor authentication. This was the first response when we got hacked. I got hacked a little over a year and a half, 2 years ago, twice. It was a nightmare, but thankfully it was only directed at my LinkedIn clients, and we were able to, get back up and running in a day, maybe two. But now we have multi-factor authentication. So if somebody's trying to get in on your thing, usually you're made aware of it.
Before you move on, Phil, multi-factor authentication, that's something, as many systems and softwares that you can use it on, you should.
Yeah.
In most cases, it's free. It's included in almost every major website and device that you can imagine right now. I mean, Google has Authenticator. There's a plenty of them that you can use out there that are no cost to the client.
Yeah.
We offer a managed service to our clients, so that if someone were to lose their device or lose their way to authenticate, we can actually go in and do it for them. But it's not necessary. You can use the free services, and they're just as good as a managed service.
Yeah, and we've done that on all of them. We have on a personal side, real quickly, we signed on with I just lost the name of it. No, it'll come to me. LifeLock. LifeLock is fantastic. Anytime we get something that's the least bit foreign or strange, I get an email instantly, and it's really come in handy when you're traveling, which we were a couple of years ago. Secure remote access is huge. That's, I would say, I don't know if George would agree with this, but I would say that's probably the biggest single most exposure right now, based on what I had already said previously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that hackers know this. Everybody thinks, for example, just to touch on this real quickly, everybody knows about the Target claim. Well, that was really the first of major hacking. It was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And what that was Target had a HVAC contractor, this is the gist of it anyway, up on the roof of a building. They needed all systems today, all equipment, mechanical devices, manufacturing equipment, lighting. The vast majority of everything is controlled by electronics now. The HVAC company needed their login code to get into their tunnel during the weekend when the management wasn't there, in order to adjust and make corrections. Well, as soon as they did that, there was a company, an organization waiting to get into targets, who'd been trying to get into targets, and then all of a sudden they had a tunnel, and they went in and stole hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people's records, credit card numbers, etc. Things have come a long way since then. That's probably 10 years ago now. But what we're seeing now is that they're going for the lower hanging fruit. That's you and I. That's our businesses. Because a lot of them out there, it's easy money at the end of the day. And then I told you I was going to touch on the security awareness training. Along with the WISP program, it's one thing to have everybody sign a WISP program and say, okay, follow all these rules. Well, no one's reading that darn thing, right? You really need to have your IT persons sit in a room and explain the significance of it, or their insurance agent, for that matter, or both, because, first and foremost, these things happen by human error.
Right.
95% of these are human error.
It's by far the leading cause.
Absolutely. And so, we all think we know. Hover over the email. Oh, that's somebody I know. Well, that's one of the hacks that I got. It was a couple old golf tournament signs. I got a bill a year later. I thought, oh gosh, we never paid that. And boom. And again, I called him finally, and he said, oh yeah, I got hacked. I haven't been able to get any emails for 2 weeks. I said, well, didn't you think that maybe there was something wrong with that picture? And he said, well, I just thought there's something wrong with my computer. Yeah, there was. You had somebody else controlling it, and now you maybe have infected a whole bunch of other people who did the very same thing. So that's human error, so that's primarily the security awareness training.
And the way that we offer security awareness training is we use, it's actually one of our security vendors that we use to protect our clients, offers a training program that runs throughout the year. And it's, everyone in the company receives, a little 5-minute video on a Friday that they have to watch with some cybersecurity topic. And then afterwards, there's maybe 5 or 6 questions that they have to answer. And then what that does is it not only keeps it in the forefront of the employee's mind, but it kind of rolls up throughout the year so that, you're building upon those things, and the business itself is then, certified as being trained throughout the year, and all of their staff being trained.
Smart. We do it annually. We actually do it when we sign our employment agreements with employees on an annual basis. Actually, in our case, our HR person goes over the WISP laws.
Right.
But I don't think that they're as impressive maybe as an agent who knows what happens, or an IT company who knows what can happen.
Right. So I got a comment online, and I thought this was a good point to address it. And they're asking, depending on the size of the business, how do they determine how much coverage they need? And is there differences based on the size of the business to get that coverage?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I usually answer this in a very simplistic answer is, and it'll sound rough coming from an insurance agent trying to sell product, but it's really whatever you can afford. I think at the end of the day, what you do is you get options, because to me, it's like life insurance, right? You're an estate planner can sit with you and say, if you die tomorrow, your family needs this. Well, you can't really do that with liability insurance, though. You don't have a tremendous basis for it, other than to say, depending on we can do a best guess analysis through a quantitative analysis of how many clients you have, what are your projected revenues, what do you stand to lose, and in comparison to how long you might be shut down before you're back up and running, thanks to PC Dynamix. And this is why the cost is, I would say relatively small overall, because it's true that it doesn't happen every day. It's very true, but it's when it happens. So insurance carriers are not charging as if this is something they're paying claims on every hour of the day. They're charging based on the remote possibility, or I don't want to say remote, the possibility of something occurring. So I think when you look at all those things, then you look at the number and you say, so the one I happen to be looking at here happens to be, and I won't use the name, they do, well, not this year, but on average, they do $10 million in revenue. They have 50 employees. They have remote staff. And they have a $5 million limit. How did we come to that? We got quotes for 1 million, 5 million, and 10 million. And 5 million became what they felt comfortable paying for based on the risk analysis that we did and what they, again, felt comfortable with.
Right. So, but even based on the numbers we were talking about earlier, if you put that into perspective, a 50-person company, reporting fees alone are going to be $100,000.
Right. And that's
in that ballpark.
And that's not including, that's first party, right? That's for
Right.
their employees. But third party, imagine if they are doing business with a bank and the bank's got 25,000 customers. or more.
Sure. Right.
Now I mean, close the doors.
Right. Right.
I don't know that you can buy enough coverage for that.
And to add on, one of the things that we do for both our existing clients and any, we require it now of any prospective clients, is we do a full cybersecurity review before we'll take the contract. And what that involves is, we put a little piece of software on each of the client's computers, and it scans for personal identifying information. It stands for PCI information, so credit card numbers, things like that. If you're in that line of business, it scans for HIPAA information and things that could be, deemed a HIPAA violation. And at the end of that review, we'll actually give you a full report saying, here are all of the things we found. These are the systems that we found them on. And if you were to be compromised, this is the dollar figure on the low end that we feel like you would, owe as a total. So it does give the business owner, a general idea of where they'd be at if a compromise occurred. So a couple other things I just wanted to say from, a technology standpoint as we're kind of wrapping up. There's a lot of things that are important for business owners to make sure that they're doing. The first of which is, make sure that your IT provider takes it as seriously for themselves as they do for you. PC Dynamix, we get third-party tested at least once a year to make sure that we're practicing what we preach. There's the old adage of the worst car on the road is the mechanics. It can't be that way anymore in the IT field because, we're just as susceptible as our clients are. Another thing I wanted to bring up is backups. I can't stress the importance of having not only multiple backups, but make sure that they're backed up to multiple locations. Have a local backup, have one that goes to the cloud, and maybe even have a third that gets, moved to a removable device that isn't on the network and can be stored off-site. I've seen things where, a ransomware will come in and everything looks fine, and then, boom, it hits, and you go to the backup and you realize that it erased the backups before it even started to encrypt the files on the network. So you really need to make sure you have multiple layers of protection in place. We talked earlier about email and how, a vast majority of ransomware and malware attacks come in via email. Make sure that you have email security in place. Make sure you have content filtering. Make sure that your DNS records and everything are set up, in the most secure way fashion. If you are in a business that needs to send documents that need to be signed that are going to have personal information on them, make sure you're using an encrypted email system so that the end user needs to log in before they can accept that email and do electronic signatures. We're kind of transitioning our clients now to what we call a zero trust policy as well. What that does is that, we let it run for about 2 weeks on your network, and it learns the way you use your computers every day. So, like at the end of the 2 weeks when we turn it on, we know that you use maybe, Microsoft Word for document editing, and we know that you use QuickBooks to do your accounting. But we also know that in the past 2 weeks, you've never had to transfer information between those two programs. Well, now with our system in place, if someone were to try to do that, it's going to bring up an error alert, and an administrator would have to log on and be able to allow it. That also works for things like undocumented execution. So if someone was to log onto your computer and try to take control and run things through like a PowerShell script, so that they're actually on the fly, coding things into your computer, we're able to block that and make sure that it can't happen. And lastly, we touched on it briefly, but there's the dark web is out there, which if anybody who doesn't know anything about it, it's really a whole subsection of the internet that you need special browsers to access it. But that is where the stolen information changes hands. That's where it's sold. that's where it's purchased. Make sure that you have something in place that your domain is being monitored on the dark web, and that if something were to happen, your IT provider is alerted and you know to change passwords to make sure your 2FA is in place, and make sure you're as equipped as possible to respond to any event. So Phil, I think we'll wrap it up there, unless you have anything else that you want to add. We'll talk a little bit of what businesses should do next and how they could contact us if needed.
Yeah, so I assume George will share my personal contact information if not already.
Scrolling across the screen right now.
Bingo. All right. So I am, like most people, working remotely in and out of the office. I'm working, lots of different days and times. And so if anybody has any further questions from me, specific questions, you might want an application just to do some due diligence. There's no harm, no foul. We certainly are fine with helping you get to the place in conjunction with George, to provide that kind of insight and analysis of what you may or may not need, and it will become a conversation that you will be very comfortable with and sleep better having had after the fact, I can assure you. Yeah, basically what we usually do is we send out one generic application, and then we farm that out to all these carriers depending on the industry that you're in. And we are always putting our best foot forward, no matter what kind of insurance it is, even auto insurance. So our model is to give people the best coverage at the least possible cost, and a good loyal client is what's most important to us, and you have to earn that trust and respect. And I'm very happy to talk about our retention of clients, because it's 32 years now, and things going just fine. So
I can personally attest. I've been a client of Phil's for many years now. You couldn't be happier with the service. Wouldn't dream of changing. They're always great. It's a great group of people, Phil included. I consider Phil a good friend and a really trusted advisor. As I continue to run my business.
Thanks, George.
For us, if anyone's interested in a cyber review for your business, my contact information is scrolling across the screen right now. I have you can book a meeting with me right online at oneononewithgeorge.com, and we can do just a little discovery call and talk about what the next steps are in getting a review for your business. Anyone who's watching the cast today, a cyber review for a new client, generally costs somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000. Anyone who says that they saw this webinar and would like a review, I'll waive the fee, and we'll do it completely free for your business. So again, there's my contact information. We scrolled Phil's across as well, and I'll put it in the comments online also. And I thank everybody who watched, and I thank you, Phil, for taking the time. I think it was really good information, and I hope we helped some business owners out there, and they take the steps they need to make sure they're protected.
I just would follow up, George, because I think people will ask, do I want to take all the time, and how much does this really cost? They need to have some sort of a thought process on it from an insurance perspective, sort of spinning off of that person's question about how much coverage. The next question will be how much cost. So, I know for our agency, we pay $750 a year for, I think it's $2 million worth of coverage. This client that I was referencing, the $5 million coverage with 50 employees and $10 million in revenue, is paying, if you take out, it happens to be pot errors and omissions, the cyber component's like $3,600. So high premium, but $10 million in revenue. I think they can swing that.
Yeah, I think $3,600 a year is well worth it.
Yeah. So that's not a promise, but I want to give you all just something to sink your teeth into.
All right. Well, thanks again, Phil. I appreciate the time. Always a pleasure. And thanks to everyone out there, and have a great day and enjoy the weekend. And we'll see you back here soon.
All right. Thank you.